everyone, welcome to Garden Fork Radio. If this is your first time listening, I appreciate you taking the time to download and check us out. I'm Eric, I'm your host. I have a YouTube channel also called Garden Fork. It's kind of eclectic DIY, and I kind of recently come up with a tagline called Make, Fix, Grow, Cook. And we're seeing how that works. But anyway, you can find us on gardenfork.tv, the website, and here on iTunes and also on YouTube. And I have various friends come on the show, and my friend today is Erin. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, Eric. Thanks.
For those of you who haven't heard before, Erin has a really cool gardening home decor blog, I would call it, called The Impatient Gardener. And we met at a Troy Built, we were both sponsored by Troy Built last year, and that worked out really well. And we've become good podcast friends, so hey.
Hey, yeah, absolutely.
We're also both from Wisconsin, so that goes a long way.
Right. It's the Midwest connection.
So you are the more gardening expert than I am, and you brought this up to me that last year we talked about gardening trends, and I know nothing about this except what I'm going to order out of the catalog this year. So, so what are your deep thoughts here?
Well, last year we talked about, I sort of made some predictions about what gardening would look like in 2016. And I think I was probably right about a couple of them and probably pretty wrong on a couple of them too.
Oh, well.
The thing with gardening trends is that I think that gardening trends tend to follow home decor trends, and home decor trends tend to follow fashion. Mm-hmm. So I think gardening is a few years behind probably all of that. But the thing with gardening is that you can't have it's hard to be sort of trendy in gardens because, of course, it takes so long to create a garden. But I think that it sort of applies to gardens that are starting to be created or people who are thinking about doing something different in the garden this year.
Uh-huh.
So, I'll just quickly, a few of the ones that we talked about last year, and I wrote a blog post about this last year too, was I predicted that gardens would get a little bit more formal, that white gardens would be quite in and trendy and hot, that edible gardens would continue to be quite popular, but that people would start trying to make them a little prettier, and and that grasses are sort of back in. So a few of those I think were right, and a few of those I think were wrong. So sort of the white gardens, I think I was probably, maybe that had its moment, but all of a sudden I'm starting to see a lot more color. I think something has happened. There was a really big trend there for all white interiors. I think people have gotten really sick of that. And I think
I've seen that, yeah.
I think that sort of is starting to phase out and translates to the garden as well. And I can't say that I'm unhappy to see that. I do like white gardens, but I wouldn't personally want an all-white garden because I would go nuts because I like colorful gardens.
It's just all white kind of seems unnatural to have in a garden.
Yeah, it's a little contrived for sure. Formal gardens, I do think people like that look, and I'm seeing a lot of sort of, new landscape photos where that have kind of a more formal, symmetrical type style to them. I think those are not entirely practical gardens for real gardeners to have. If you hire a gardening staff, you bet, go for it. But the idea of keeping hedges trimmed to within an inch of their life is not easy for the average home gardener. So I think practicality might start taking over a little bit more.
Yeah, we up where we live, it's a very it's a very rural area, but just west of us is a very fancy horse area, and boy, they have some fancy hedges and stuff there, and they're clearly fully maintained, Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they're beautiful. I do like that. I do like that style, but I just think that once people realize what goes into maintaining something like that, and especially when you've got so much symmetry, if you're planting two plants or a row of plants that are all the same, and one of them dies, well, now you've lost it all, and you have to try to buy a replacement plant that's the same size as the rest of the plants, or else it takes years before it ever looks right again.
You know what I figured what those people do is they have a back area where they grow some more of that same plant.
Well, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah. We could have a greenhouse that just does that. That could be our business. We do replacementplant.com.
I think it would be a good business. So one of the things that I think that I totally missed the ball on last year, because this was happening last year, and I totally missed this last year, pollinator-friendly gardens are going to be big. Everyone, I think, is getting wise to this idea that we need pollinators in the gardens, and gardeners have to assist in giving pollinators what they need to live. In fact, the perennial of 2017 is butterfly weed.
Oh, wow.
Which is So that's Asclepia pia tuberosa, in case you're interested in
I knew that.
Name. Yes. So it's a beautiful plant. I don't grow it. I've seen it in other gardens, and I've always wanted to pick one up, and I actually had a hard time finding it in the past. Now that it's the perennial of the year, it'll be in all the garden centers, I'm sure. So that's just one little sign, I think.
Can you grow it from seed, do you know?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So it gets to be quite large, but you can grow that from seed.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, and so you missed that. That was...
I totally missed that last year. I don't know why that wasn't on my list, but I think that was definitely starting to happen last year, and it's definitely going to be big this year. There is a lot of focus on everyone doing their little part to help the pollinators.
All right.
I also think gardens are starting to get smaller, and I think this ties in with this whole idea that more and more people are renting and not buying, and maybe are looking. Everyone talks about a low maintenance garden, which is kind of a misnomer. There certainly is there is no such thing as a no maintenance garden. That I'll tell you for sure. And a low maintenance garden is more of a relative thing. It can be lower maintenance than some gardens, but every garden has some maintenance. So I think people maybe want to spend a little bit less time, but they still want a garden. So I think that all adds up to smaller gardens in general.
Wow.
So that also ties in. And the other thing that you see now is a lot of the plant breeders are coming out with dwarf shrubs.
I've seen
really
that, yeah.
Nice dwarf shrubs. And I think that all ties into this idea of slightly smaller gardening spaces, and shrubs are very hot because, of course, if you are looking for a lower maintenance garden, shrubs are probably the way to go.
Huh?
So last year I talked about edible gardens getting a little prettier, and I think that's probably going to happen. Interestingly enough, I saw some article somewhere that raised bed gardening was out, which I think is ridiculous.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to be out. I also think it's the easiest way to do any kind of vegetable gardening. I have a hard time envisioning myself doing vegetable gardening in any way other than raised beds.
It's the only way I go with vegetable gardening. It's just, someone just asked some questions yesterday about using that Trex plastic recycled lumber as for raised bed gardens, and I don't think it'll work actually, because I think it tends to warp when it's put on its side. But maybe somebody that's listening has had some experience with that. It's radio@gardenfork.tv. But definitely, the raised bed thing, you don't have to dig up the yard, and if you're in a rental, you could put a raised bed in and then just take it out and you're good to go.
Well, and not just that, it's such a back saver. I mean, who wants to bend over and be kneeling on the ground if you can kind of stand at a somewhat normal height or sit on the edge of a bed and just kind of weed? I love it.
That's what I do a lot, is I just sit on the edge, and it's kind of it's really much, much easier to weed the garden that way. Yeah,
it is. The closer the weeds are to your face, I feel like the more likely they are to be removed.
Yeah.
And the last one I was thinking, well, actually I have two other ones. I do think gardeners in general are probably leaning more organic, but I don't think that's anything new. I think that's been a trend that's been happening for a while, and that certainly ties in with the pollinator-friendly gardens. Obviously, if you're going to have a pollinator-friendly garden, you can't be using a bunch of chemicals that kill every bug that comes near them.
And what's the second one?
And then the last one is, I think outbuildings are going to be kind of, this sort of ties in with gardens, but I think people are getting into outbuildings, sheds and small greenhouses. But there's this, sheds have been a huge deal forever in England, which I always kind of look to as sort of the trendsetters for gardening, because it's such a bigger deal over there than it is in the U.S. And, there's serious shed activity going on over there. People practically live in their sheds. And I think that, there's the she shed is a big deal, and there's the man shed, and it's sort of the precursor to the man room. But I think that people are looking at nicer nicer outbuildings that are places that they can actually not just store things, but perhaps spend a little time too. Maybe a little potting shed in there, or maybe even like a little lounge area. Or sometimes, I mean, you see people make like yoga studios and things out of these too. That's probably a little bit fancier than most people are going to get. But I do think you're going to start seeing more and more sort of nicer sheds that serve a purpose beyond just storing the garden tools.
Yeah, because I have actually, Radio Rick, Rick, my co-host Rick, is planning to build a outdoor building. It's going to be a multi-purpose room, but it's going to be growing in there, and also kind of a reading, studying, office kind of room. I think it's nice to have a separate physical place to go away from, to kind of refocus to do something else.
I agree.
And I also, maybe it was on popularmechanics.com, I saw, I don't know if it follows the building codes in the U.S. yet, but a lot of people are dropping a prefab grandparent house in their backyards. So instead of their...
I saw that, yes.
Yeah. I don't know where... Did I see that on Facebook maybe? But I thought about actually Deke Diedrichsen, my friend who does Tiny Yellow House and builds tiny houses for people. I'd like to get his take on that. But it sounds like it's like an efficiency apartment that has handicap bathroom, handicap shower, and you just hook up to the plumbing and you're good to go. And that's really a neat way so that you don't have to build a whole other building, but your family doesn't have to go into a nursing home or something. Mm-hmm. I've not thought about it. The other thing I thought, Garden Fork, you can kind of tell what's going on with people because I start getting more comments about a certain subject. And the edible garden thing is a constant. I don't know if there's some articles out there on Pinterest that keep on showing up in people's feeds or something, but there's a constant, I want to build. And a lot of times it's a new gardener that wants to have an edible garden. So I thought that was interesting.
I think edible gardening is what a lot of people get into gardening for. I think that's where a lot of people start, and then often they expand into some other kind of gardening. But I do think edible gardening is what gets a lot of people into gardening to begin with.
There you go. The other thing is people get into organic gardening, and then I have a video about the tomato hornworm, which can defoliate your tomato plants in a day.
And they're ugly. They're really ugly buggers.
And one of my ways of getting rid of them is I just cut them in half with the scissors. And then people get all upset about that. And I'm like, well, organic gardening is not necessarily less brutal. It just doesn't use petroleum products,
Right.
So, wow. All right. Well, so we'll circle back to this in a year and see what has changed.
Yeah. We'll see how wrong or right we were this next year.
We were talking before we started recording, but I just made some yeast batter pancakes, and they were quite good.
So how is that different from? I mean, obviously with the yeast, but do you make that all in one time, or you make that ahead of time, or how does that work?
You make the batter the night before, and I was working off a Mark Bittman recipe, and he said to leave it out overnight. I put it in the fridge because with my breads, a lot of times a cold ferment with the yeast is kind of beneficial. So I put it in the fridge, and we made it, and they were quite delicious. You just threw in some eggs at the last minute, and I have a cast iron waffle pan. It has it's two handles, and you flip it, and it was a lot of fun. So the video should be coming out. I hope when the week this podcast comes out, I'll have it all wrapped up in one show. But you can't eat too many waffles. That's the only problem. You really like them, but then you're like, ooh, boy, I can't eat too many of these.
Right.
So the other thing that we both have experience with lately, I've been talking about decluttering a lot on the podcast, and I tried to get rid of some things that still had value, some computer hard drives that are just too small for what I use them for now, and a computer desk from IKEA, and it was actually quite frustrating to try and give it away for free. So...
Yeah, so nobody wanted it, or what happened?
People wanted it, but they wouldn't come pick it up.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating because I'm like, someone would say, well, is it available? I'm like, well, this other person said they're going to come. Let me email them and see if they're coming. And you would email them and not hear back from them. And so it became this kind of trying to schedule logistics of who got what. And then we always talk about how great it is to declutter and how great it is to Freecycle things and things go to a good home and get used again. But the logistics of getting it from your place to someone coming to you to pick it up, and you have to go to work, or you're out that you have to go run an errand or whatever, I'm in the city, so you just can't leave it at the front door, and say, right. I'll just leave it at the front door, So, what have you?
We had that same thing actually just come up this weekend. We've been cleaning out a space, and we had inherited a sleeper sofa with our house. Ooh. Which is like, right. Actually, it was really a nice sofa, and I thought we were going to use it in the basement. We've got a kind of a finished half of the basement, and now that we're actually getting around to that part of our house, we realized we just have too much furniture down there, so something had to go. So that was marked, and I put it up on it wasn't Freecycle, but it was our local Facebook rummage group. There's a lot of groups on Facebook that are sort of a buy, sell, trade, freebies kind of thing. Oh. And I put it up there for free, and I got no replies. So we made arrangements to borrow somebody's truck to get it to Goodwill over the weekend. And had a neighbor planning to come over to help us get it in the truck, because moving a sleeper sofa is not for the faint of heart.
No, I won't touch them.
No. So we took it to Goodwill. Well, the night before we were ready to take it to Goodwill, we had the truck arranged, the neighbor arranged the whole thing. I got an email from somebody who said, "Is this still available? I'd really like it, and I desperately need furniture." And I said, "Well, it's yours, but can you get it you have to get it by tomorrow?" I said, "Well, I don't have a vehicle, but if you could give me a couple more days." And, I was really sort of faced with this kind of moral crisis, because I really think this person probably needed it. And I really did want it to go to a good home, which is not to say that it is benefiting a nice organization if it goes to Goodwill, but I like to help people directly if I can. But then I thought, if this person sticks me with this couch and doesn't show up, now I'm stuck with this couch again, and I have to rearrange the whole thing, and I have this all set for tomorrow. And in the end, and I asked where she lived, because I thought if she's on the way to Goodwill, we could just drop it off at her house. Yeah. Well, she was completely the other direction from Goodwill, in a good distance away. So we ended up just taking it to Goodwill, and I still feel a little bad about that. But I have been burned so many times on the free pickup thing where people never show up, that I just didn't want to get burned again.
No, you totally did the right thing. That there'll be another couch there, and maybe closer to her. Well, and if
she really wants it, she can go to Goodwill and go buy it, right?
Yeah.
So
my issue, I have my friend Bill, who actually just came in the door and the dogs are barking. He taught me this one, and I should have heeded it here. I was trying to be nice, of course, and that gets you in trouble. But he has a hard and fast time. He says, "It's here. You have to come and get it. Otherwise, I go to the next person." Well, I'm kind of paraphrasing his method of it. But the next time I give away something, someone says, "I want it," I go, "Fine. You have until 7:00 tonight to come. Otherwise, I give it to the next person."
Yeah.
And
I wonder. Sorry, go ahead.
I just thought that would either make them commit or not.
I wonder if I was just thinking, I wonder if like charging a nominal amount for somebody makes somebody a little bit more serious about it. And then if they come to pick it up and you don't really want the money anyways, just say, "Here, take it for free," but at least they came. I wonder if that would help keep people be a little more serious about whether they're really going to pick it up or not.
Yeah, I think so. If they're looking, a lot of people just comb the free section. There's apps that will go through, you can set up keywords for Craigslist searches and stuff like that. And I mean, I've listed stuff for free, and people text right away. I'm not text, but email and go, "I'll be there. I'm coming right now." And I'm like, I believe it when I see it. So,
right.
I mean, they can't be at their computer all day looking for this. Maybe they are. I don't know.
Right. No, it is frustrating though, because it's happened to me on several occasions as well.
What I have found is we have a local group on that Nextdoor. It's called Nextdoor Neighbor. It's nextdoor.com. Which is like Facebook, but a little friendlier, and you have to use your real name, because I think they check it against an address database. So people are a little, at least like in Brooklyn, they're within like a 5-block radius on this micro community, and so at least with that, I'm like, okay, come knock on the door, just walk over and come knock on the door kind of thing. So
That sounds great. I love that. That sounds wonderful.
I'm moving away from Craigslist and Freecycle and more toward our nextdoor, and that worked really well. Like I had some hard drives, and after I got frustrated with the Freecycle thing, I just put it up on nextdoor, and someone that lived a couple blocks, so I just walked over and grabbed them. And then the computer desk, the person finally emailed back and said, "Oh, I've been sick. I'm sorry. And oh, by the way, I measured my space and it won't fit." And I'm like, "Well, I gave you the measurements were in the ad, you know."
Right.
And so I just emailed the next people, and I'm like, "It's sitting. I wrapped it in plastic. I tuck it behind the trash cans, and I'm like, if you want it, you can go get it. You know, otherwise, it's going to be taken by the trash."
Did they take it, or don't you know?
I don't know. I left. I drove up to the country, so
There you go.
we'll see it from there. So what else is up?
Well, we are, as I tend to do this time of year, it seems that every year something like this pops up. We are working on sort of doing a very low budget fix on the finished half of our basement. We're going to put a home office down there. My husband has started a new business, and so he's going to be working from home. And we needed a place to put, he needs a fairly large desk. So I didn't really want to give up our guest bedroom to accommodate that.
Yeah.
So he's going down to the finished half of the basement, and you know this has been sort of the thorn in our side since we bought this house, which is now we've been in this house for I think 12 years. No, 14 years. And we've never done anything with that space. It was finished very much on the cheap by previous owners or whoever, maybe it was even the owners before that. So instead of drywall, they put up sort of this pressed cardboard, fiberboard kind of cardboard stuff that kind of has a texture on it. So they put furring strips over all the seams instead of taping and mudding everything. And it's not really properly insulated, and it's not really properly ventilated in terms of, you know, it could use one more vent coming into it to get some heat in there. It was really slapped together, but it'll do. It's okay. It actually has a beautiful fireplace in it. The fireplace from upstairs, stone fireplace from upstairs, continues into the basement, and the flue was closed off again by a previous owner many years ago, which is fine. I don't really want to carry wood down there and burn fires down there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a pretty space, despite the fact that it has typically low ceilings in a basement. But anyways, we've finally gotten around to trying to get that area into some sort of workable space, and we've got half of it painted so far. We unfortunately talk about decluttering. We have too much stuff, so we can't paint the whole basement at one time because there was no place to put the stuff. So we kind of moved all the stuff to one half of the room, and now we have to move all the stuff to the other half of the room to paint the other half of the room. But that's good because in the process, I've been getting rid of a lot of things, including that sofa. I just made the decision today to get rid of some very nice dining chairs that were my grandmother's, which, you know, anytime there's sort of a sentimental tie to something, it's a little bit hard to get rid of something. But we use those dining chairs twice a year. We haul them upstairs. We don't have a real dining room, so when we have big dinners, we set up tables in our very long living room and kind of, you know, rearrange things a little bit. And so about twice a year we do that, and we bring those chairs upstairs. But the rest of the year they take up a ton of space in our basement, and it's just kind of sad. That's not really what they were meant to be. So I called up my cousin, who has the dining table that went with those, and I think he's going to take them. And we're just going to get some folding chairs, or we'll figure out something else for seating when people come over. So, you know, it's decluttering, it's painting, and a few little other things have popped up that we have to deal with. And we have to get, you know, we're not spending the proper money on this. If we were really spending our money correctly on this and wanted to invest enough into it, we would do an electrical upgrade and get some more lighting in there, and we would do something about the heating situation. But we're going to just make it work with what we have, and kind of, you know, this is a lipstick on a pig situation, I think.
You know, you posted on Instagram some decorative lights, the kind of retro-y lights that you really liked. And I looked at the price of them and my jaw dropped. And
Exactly.
my comment to you if you're thinking of this because you talked about lighting, is that you can buy a lot of the, and we of course have a video about this. It was sponsored by eBay of all people. You can actually buy on eBay or on Amazon a lot of the parts to make decorative lamps. They could be retro lamps or modernist, mid-century lamps or lamps of today. But you can buy all those parts and put them all together yourself. So I thought to Erin, I was like, oh, you could build that thing,
Yeah, well, now that you mention that, I'm thinking about trying that because, I will tell you, I'm a little intimidated by anything related to electricity. But, I mean, I see these, the fact that just might be worth giving it a try. And I know if I had questions, I could call you.
Yeah, there's I'll link to the video in the show notes, but eBay has been wanting to show people that it's not just used stuff on their site, but actually a lot of people have eBay stores. And there are several electrical lighting part companies that list their products on eBay stores there. And so I bought everything on eBay to build a nice lamp, a nice hanging lamp. It has a black metal shade with a chrome rim around it. And it has the old school silvered stainless steel bulb holder with a little click on off switch. And old timey, it's UL rated wire, but it looks like old school lamp cord,
Yeah. No, I think I might try that. I'm intrigued, but ever since you left that comment on that Instagram post, I am intrigued by that idea.
I'm like yelling at you, don't buy it.
Right. Well, it is. Right. That's just it. I mean, I need 3 lights that are the same. I think those lights that I linked to are $130 a piece. I mean, that's almost the entire, basement budget right there.
Yeah.
But I still have to do something about flooring. So, a huge chunk of it anyway. So, it's to save money on that, and not to mention, I do like the opportunity to make my own things if I can. It's a good, and especially in a place like this, frankly, the basement, it's a good place to sort of experiment with things too. Because if it goes terribly wrong, it's not that big of a deal.
Hey, before we end here, there's actually 3 new reviews on our iTunes page, the Garden Fork Radio iTunes page. Would you like to hear them?
Absolutely.
The first one is from Sandy, and I know her already from correspondence. Newbie to podcast, 5 stars. It's always good. I wasn't a podcast person until I watched Garden Fork YouTube videos. The videos were great, so I figured why not try a podcast? Suffice to say, Eric and his friends converted me. They're entertaining, enjoyable to listen to, and people that would clearly invite to a Christmas dinner and then let them stay for breakfast the next day. Gardening, beekeeping, DIY of things that you wouldn't think to try, like flamethrowers. No, I didn't put that in. They are well worth your time, and you will learn a lot and not even realize it. And that's from Sandy. Very nice.
Oh, that's a wonderful review.
The next one's from David, who I've also corresponded with. Eric, either solo or with a guest, covers a wide variety of DIY topics, podcasts, visits, topics. Okay, podcasts visit topics such as beekeeping, practical home repair, maple syrup making, gardening, and a number of random and interesting topics. Podcasts are about 30 minutes in length, makes for a great commuting companion. Always happy to see a Garden Fork Radio download. Nice.
Nice.
And the last was from listener. I don't blame people wanting to be anonymous in their reviews. I love listening to these guys. I'm a 59-year-old woman who likes to fix things, but doesn't have a lot of skill or even a toolbox. Oh, we could fix that. They make me feel confident and help me decide what's possible. So he won't be tiling my own floor. No, I won't be tiling anyone's floor. So he won't be tiling my floor, but I am making a pizza oven this spring. Yay!
I love that review. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. I love that. I should just add that the Garden Fork Facebook page,
the group,
or Facebook group, excuse me, is such a great resource, and that group and the people in it are actually what spurred me into action and got me the information that I needed to finally ditch cable. There were some very knowledgeable folks there who answered some of sort of the lingering questions that I had about, because we've been wanting to get rid of cable for probably 2 years now,
yeah,
and have been gradually inching that way. But it's a little hard to know exactly what you're doing and not end up in a big mess. And boy, there were some really knowledgeable folks there who really helped us figure that out. And we officially got rid of cable right before Christmas, and we have not a single regret.
And you wrote an article about it on your site, which I will link to, because I actually learned a couple things from your post.
Yeah, and it was great, but boy, that is there's people in that Facebook group who have just a wealth of knowledge about all kinds of topics, and I was happy to find some folks to help me with those last few questions.
That's cool. I have to rename the Garden Fork group because we have a Facebook page, which is an open page that is really kind of like a one-to-many relationship. I post things on there, and it shows up in their news feed. The Garden Fork group is like a closed private discussion group. We keep it closed to keep the spammers out and angry people. And it allows people, whatever anyone posts on there is shared to everyone. So it's a little bit different than the page. And I'm sorry if I'm vague about that. But I'm going to change. I think I'll call it the Garden Fork group. Maybe I'll call it that because they're both called Garden Fork, and it's a little confusing for people on Facebook. So I have to work on that. That's mine.
Well, anyways, if people have questions, I think it's a great place to just throw them out there because I think there's just a lot of people with a lot of knowledge in that group. So it's been very helpful to me.
Like 1,500 people there.
That's great.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have very cute dogs.
Yeah.
So there's occasional dog pictures, which I appreciate.
The dog stream. All right, cool. Well, thanks for taking the time, Erin. I appreciate that.
Always nice to talk to you, Eric.
So, guys, you have any questions for me or Erin? It's radio@gardenfork.tv. And you can find Erin at theimpatientgardener.com. And also, you're really active on Instagram as well, right?
Yes, I am. I like Instagram a lot.
And
that's I'm Impatient Gardener over there is my username, just Impatient Gardener.
Which fits you very well.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, make it a great day. We'll see you later.